February 1st, 1959. 9 experienced hikers set off into the Ural Mountains of Russia. They were students and graduates, trained, prepared, and in peak physical condition. Their route was well documented. Their equipment was adequate. Their experience was beyond question. They never came back. When investigators finally reached their campsite weeks later, what they found defied every explanation available to modern science. The tent had been cut open from the inside. The hikers had fled into minus 30-degree temperatures in their socks. Some had injuries consistent with a car crash, yet there were no vehicles, no roads, and no visible cause. One hiker was missing her tongue. Soviet authorities classified the case almost immediately. The official verdict was a single phrase that explained nothing. A compelling, unknown force. This is the Dyatlov Pass incident, and after 65 years, we still do not have a definitive answer. To understand what happened on that mountain, you need to understand who these people were. Igor Dyatlov was 23 years old. A talented engineering student at the Ural Polytechnical Institute, he had already led multiple expeditions into difficult terrain. This trip was his creation, his route, his plan, his team. The group included 8 fellow students and 1 experienced guide named Semyons, who was 38 years old. A veteran of World War II, he had survived things most people cannot imagine. He was not someone easily frightened. Their goal was to reach Otorten Mountain, a Grade 3 expedition, the highest difficulty rating in Soviet hiking classifications. It was ambitious, but every person on that team had earned the right to attempt it. They set off on January 23rd. By the time they reached the mountain's lower slope, 1 team member had fallen ill and turned back. That decision almost certainly saved his life. The remaining 9 pressed on. On the night of February 1st, they made camp on the slope of a mountain. The local Mansi people called Kolotsi in the Mansi language. That name means one thing: Dead Mountain. When the group failed to return on schedule, a search party was dispatched. What they found on February 26th stunned everyone. The tent was still standing, but it had been sliced open from the inside. Not cut, not torn. Deliberately sliced, as if the hikers needed to exit through the fabric rather than the door. As if leaving through the entrance was not an option. Their belongings were still inside. Food, equipment, shoes, coats. They had left everything behind. Tracks in the snow showed that all 9 had walked, not run away from the tent, in a single file line, heading toward a nearby tree line approximately 1 mile downhill. At the tree line, investigators found the remains of a small fire. 2 of the hikers, Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Kravanishenko, were found nearby. They were barefoot. Their clothes had been partially removed. They had died of hypothermia. Igor Dyatlov was found 300 meters away, frozen in the snow. His posture suggested he had been trying to crawl back toward the tent. 2 more bodies were recovered nearby in similar condition. The remaining 4 were not found until May, buried under 4 meters of snow in a ravine. And this is where the case stopped making sense. These 4 hikers had catastrophic internal injuries. Broken ribs, a fractured skull. Injuries, the medical examiner stated, were consistent with the force of a high-speed car accident, yet there was no external trauma to the skin. No bruising, no cuts. Whatever force had broken their bones had done so from the inside out. And Ludmila Dubinina, one of the female hikers, was found with her eyes missing, and her tongue and the soft tissue of her lips gone. No explanation was ever given. Soviet investigators launched a formal inquiry. They interviewed witnesses, they examined the evidence. They consulted experts, and then, quietly, they closed the case. The official conclusion stated that the hikers had died as a result of, and I want to read this exactly as it was written, an unknown compelling force which the hikers were unable to overcome. That was it. That was the entire explanation. The case files were classified and placed in a secret archive. They were not made available to the public for over 30 years. There were other details that investigators noted but never explained. Witnesses in the region reported strange orange spheres of light in the sky on the night the hikers died. Military personnel stationed nearby also logged the same observations. Some of the clothing recovered from the bodies tested positive for low-level radiation, and several witnesses who were near the mountain that night reported hearing a sound they described as a deep, mechanical roar, followed by silence. None of these details made it into the official report. In the decades since, researchers, investigators, and scientists have proposed dozens of explanations. Here are the three that have gained the most serious consideration. Theory A: the avalanche. In 2019, Russian prosecutors officially reopened the case and concluded that the hikers had been struck by a small, delayed avalanche. The force of the snow, they argued, could explain the internal injuries. The hikers, disoriented in the dark, fled and died of hypothermia. It is a logical explanation, but it has serious problems. Experienced avalanche researchers have pointed out that the snow conditions that night were not consistent with avalanche activity. No avalanche debris was found at the site, and the tent, which would have been buried or destroyed, was still standing. Theory B: military testing. Several investigators have noted that the Ural Mountains were an active Soviet military testing zone in 1959. The radiation on the clothing, the orange lights, the classified files, the mechanical sounds, these details, taken together, suggest that the hikers may have stumbled into a weapons test. A parachute mine, for instance, detonates above the ground and produces an intense pressure wave capable of causing internal injuries without external trauma. It would also explain why the Soviet government was so quick to classify the files. Theory C: infrasound. A third theory proposes that the hikers were exposed to infrasound low-frequency sound waves below the range of human hearing, generated by specific wind conditions moving over the mountain's unusual topography. Infrasound at certain frequencies is known to cause extreme panic, disorientation, and irrational behavior in humans. Some researchers believe it could explain why 9 calm, rational, experienced hikers cut open their tent and ran into the freezing dark without their shoes. None of these theories fully explains every detail of what was found. None of them explains the missing tongue. None of them explains the eyes. None of them explains the orange lights, confirmed by multiple independent witnesses. And none of them explains why the Soviet government buried the files for 30 years, and why even the newly released documents appear to have key pages removed. Igor Dialov and his 8 companions went into those mountains as experienced, capable, fearless people. Whatever they encountered in the dark on February 1st, 1959, was something they could not prepare for. Something no training could have anticipated. 65 years later, their families still have no real answers. The Soviet files are still incomplete. The witnesses who reported the lights in the sky are now gone, and the mountain renamed Diet Pass in honor of the group stands exactly as it did that night. Quiet, cold, waiting. So I want to ask you something, and I genuinely want to know what you think. 3 theories: an avalanche, a military weapon, infrasound. Leave a comment with just the letter A, B, or C, and tell me which one you believe, or if you think the answer is something else entirely. Tell me that too. Because the truth is, we may never know what killed them, and that might be the most disturbing thing of all. If this case kept you up tonight, subscribe, because next week, we're going somewhere even darker.